Peace, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to Israel Doctrines Google Hangout. I'm your host, Carl Albert Davis, and today's title is Donald Trump's FBI Director, Kash Patel confirmed, Declassified. So this the topic this morning, and as y'all know, I'm not the Israel Doctrine news anchor that bring y'all this type of news. So we got to get the news anchor in the house. Dollar Skills. He's more equipped to bring you this type of information. I'm equipped to bring Bible information. So we will be bringing Bible information in days to come. Dollar, what's up?
Bro?
All right, y'all. I cut the show off, but I'm back and watch my hands from now. You got it.
Yeah, what up, bro? What's going on?
Kash Patel, however you say his name.
Yeah, Kashyap Patel was confirmed. And as always, when we do these shows for the listening audience, make sure you get your pen and your pad or sit in front of your laptop and take down this information, because what I'm going to be dropping, I want everybody to do their own research to understand what I'm dropping here. Now, the first thing everybody that listens to this show should do is go to the Israel Doctrine channel and just put in the search Donald Trump. We've been doing a bunch of shows as of late, and you might want to watch those because it'll catch you up to where we are currently. We were waiting for the confirmation of who the new FBI director would be. Yesterday, Kashyap Patel was confirmed as the new FBI director, 51-49 vote in the Senate. And I believe that this is where everything is about to start, that we spoke about in the previous shows as it relates to declassification of documentation that goes as far back as JFK. So there's a lot of things to kind of unpack here, but I'm going to try to be as short-winded as possible and walk everybody through what to look for as it relates to the declassification. Now, since we did one of our previous shows, I had stated that a lot of the declass would be coming through the FBI director pick, which is now Kashyap Patel, but some of the declass has been shifted over. So everybody get your pen and pad. The JFK, the MLK, and the RFK declassification of what really went on with the murders of those three highly political figures in the U.S. has been shifted and to be released by Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. And I'll give you guys a brief breakdown of who she is. She's an American politician, an Air Force veteran who serves in the United States House of Representatives from Florida's 13th Congressional District. So I had spoke previous, and I thought they were going to release the declassification of MLK, Robert Kennedy Jr., and RFK. Pardon me, MLK, Robert Kennedy Jr., and John F. Kennedy. It is going to be released in about, I would want to say 40 days from now. All of that information will be released by Anna Paulina Luna. So if you guys want to go on X, formerly Twitter, and look at Anna Paulina Luna, who is the congresswoman from Florida's 13th Congressional District, she made a post saying in about 45 days, maybe about 3 or 4 days ago, the declassification of those documents will be released through her. So that's coming. Now, Kash Patel is now officially in office, and there's a lot to unpack about the things that he's going to be declassifying. I want to make this clear. We are currently in an information war. And we've been in the information war in the United States for a long time. So some of the things that I'm going to be speaking about, if you do like wiki search, you'll see them still writing up that these are conspiracy theories and things of that nature. And that's what I mean when I say we're still in an information war. That kind of lines up with this platform as well, because I believe that Israel doctrine has been in an information war for a very long time as it relates to the Africa Bambaataa debacle. And a lot of this stuff that I'm going to be dropping here now is parallel to what has went on with this platform as it relates to information war, shadow banning, government interference with platforms. A lot of it was taking place in 2020 with the COVID and the whole whether the election of 2020 was stolen, where it came out after Elon Musk purchased Twitter that yes, in fact, the federal government was banning people's speech and violating constitutional rights as it relates to online content. And that's with the COVID and the actual the election stuff. So very similar to this platform, which I believe has been shadow banned and being shadow banned. This stuff is all relative. So long story short, let me just walk through, and like I said, pen and pad, everybody. I'm going to walk y'all through some of the major things that's about to drop, and it's going to shake the foundation of the globe. Like, this is unprecedented times we're living in. The United States has been infiltrated from within, meaning there's traitors and treasonous individuals in government that have been caught in what I'm going to say is the biggest military sting operation in history. Let me say that again. We are currently inside of a military sting operation. And when I say military, I'm going to make the military connection for everybody listening when I get to that portion of the Declass that's coming. But the first thing that I want to speak about is one of the operations that was ran in the White House. And let me just get my notes here. I want everybody to look up in their leisure, Crossfire Razor. Now, Crossfire Razor is the operation that was put together to spy on Trump back in 2017 when he came in the White House. His political campaign had been spied on by the previous administration. And we spoke about this in a previous show. So that's why I said, yet again, make sure you guys put the Donald Trump's name in the Israel Doctrine search and go watch those previous videos, because it'll give you a little more information to kind of line up with what I'm saying. But Crossfire Hurricane is one of the first things that was done to Donald Trump as it related to his first presidency, i.e., he was being spied on by the FBI and other intelligence agencies, and how they were able to do that. I spoke about it before, but I'll just recap that real quick. Basically, what Barack Obama, the previous administration to Trump's first presidency, did was they used the Five Eyes Law Enforcement Group. So you might want to go do research on that. The Five Eyes Law Enforcement Group is a combination of 5 countries coming together with the U.S. to share an intelligence information. Now, what Barack did was he reported that Trump was in bed with Russia to a foreign agency in the Five Eyes. But what he did was he didn't fill out a specific form to kind of cover up that he did that, because generally when the president is moving within the Five Eyes, he fills out a form that informs the public that he is, speaking to those agencies. But in this instance, they went around that and they activated foreign intelligence on Trump, which basically led to them putting a bug in the Trump Towers in New York and in the White House. So previously to Trump coming in office, he was bugged by the intelligence agencies. And this all culminated into allegations of him being a spy or an operative of Russia. That led to the first impeachment of Donald Trump. Everybody knows Trump was impeached twice, but he won both impeachments. They never officially got to impeach him. They got to charge him, but they didn't win the impeachment hearings. So the first hearing was that he was in bed with Russia, and that he also had made a telephone call to Vladimir Zelensky, which is the Ukraine leader, and basically asked him to investigate Joe Biden. So because Trump spoke to Zelensky, they basically tried to tie together all of these things, and they set off Crossfire Razor. Now, this is where the military comes in, because Crossfire Razor also involves, and let me go through my notes, them actually hitting Michael Thomas Flynn, which is a United States Army Lieutenant General. He was convicted of felony based on a slap case. And this also lines up with Israel doctrine, because he knows one or two things about a slap case. For everybody that don't know, it's an acronym. SLAPP, SLAPP, stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. So basically, General Michael Flynn was convicted of lying to FBI agents, but Donald Trump pardoned him. And the reason why Trump pardoned him is because their claims is that this was a slap case. It was a strategic lawsuit against public participation, where they came after Michael Flynn. Trump had been elected in the White House 2017. Michael Flynn was the national security advisor. He was appointed by Barack Obama. So as Trump is coming into the White House in 2017, General Flynn is still at the national security advisor, and the FBI sent two agents to the White House to ask Michael Flynn some questions. He didn't understand that he was being investigated, and they used that to say that he lied and charged him with a felony. And his whole life was pretty much in shambles until Trump pardoned Michael Flynn. And this is where the military comes into play, because I just want to read you some of what Michael Flynn was doing in his tenure after he was put in position by Barack Obama. His military career included a key role in shaping U.S. counterterrorism strategy and dismantling insurgent networks in Afghanistan and Iraq wars. So because Michael Flynn was a key military individual in the national security, he knew the terminology they use as it relates to Michael Flynn is he knew where all the dead bodies was at, or he knew where all the government corruption was at as it related to the previous wars in Afghanistan. So when Trump came in order to neutralize him, they put a strategic lawsuit against public participation. Not a civil action, a criminal action. So that is what led to the whole Russia is colluding with Trump back in 2017 and his impeachment. That was based on an operation named Crossfire Razor. So that is one of the declassifications that is going to expose what people call the deep state was doing as it related to the Trump presidency. And again, I'm telling y'all, this is the biggest military sting operation in history, and I'm going to explain why when I get to another Declass. But the first Declass to watch for and to do your research on is Crossfire Razor, and that was to go after General Michael Flynn and put a strategic lawsuit against public participation against him. The second thing to look in on the Declass, very similar terminology, is an operation called Crossfire Hurricane. Now, Crossfire Hurricane is what I already explained. It involved them bugging the Trump towers, lining Trump up with Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine and impeaching him in the first Trump administration. So Crossfire Hurricane is another thing that's about to be declassed, and that's going to show what we spoke about on the previous show, but I'll just recap. If everybody wants to know where all the information came out about or a big portion of the information about Crossfire Hurricane, it was done in a report released by Special Counsel John Durham in 2022. So after Trump was impeached, obviously he appointed a special counsel to investigate who lined him up with the FBI while he was a president, and a full report was released in 2022 after two court cases were launched. One was against a Russian operative named Igor Danchenko, and John Durham was the prosecutor, and it involved a law firm Perkins Cooley purchasing a phony dossier. If everybody wants to know, the Federal Bureau of Investigation keeps dossiers on people. We spoke about this in the conscious community in the past, because Khalil Amani has spoke about the federal government has dossiers on everybody in the conscious community, i.e. everybody's being watched and monitored by the federal government. And the dossier is basically a breakdown of your whole life. They got all the information and gather on you. Dossier that was purchased against Trump by the law firm with Hillary Clinton was a phony dossier. It alleged that Trump was in a Russian hotel having sex with underage girls. That all came to be false. He was impeached. The hearings were held. It was found that none of that stuff was true. But at the same time, it showed that our intelligence agencies have been weaponized against we, the American people, mainly the United States president, which was elected, and that is what Crossfire Hurricane involved. So now that Kash Patel has been confirmed, and I have to add this because there was another confirmation that happened about a week or two ago, Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi is now the current Attorney General of the Department of Justice. She's another one of Trump's picks. She's a former AG or Attorney General for the state of Florida. Those two individuals is how we're going to see prosecution for all of these crimes against the United States. So Pam Bondi is now the Attorney General, and now you got Kash Patel, who's the Director of the FBI. Those two individuals have the power to prosecute a lot of these politicians, Hollywood celebrities, foreign agents and operatives for what has truly been going on in this country, which is the overthrow of the United States and a plan to have here attacked militarily by either North Korea or Russia, and for us to lose the war so that they can overthrow the United States Constitution. Now, I'm going to get to the third thing. So I'm going to recap. You got Crossfire Razor. Go look that up. That involved going after Michael Flynn, the general that was appointed by Barack Obama, but stayed in as the head of national security advisor under Trump's first administration, and how Trump had to free him with a pardon because of how much they attacked him. Because, again, he knew where all of the corruption was as it related to previous wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, right? So then they did Crossfire Hurricane, which was they bugged the White House and the Trump Towers to line Trump up as a Russian operative and have him overthrown through an impeachment in the first administration. Now I'm going to get to the big meat of what to watch for in the Declass. And this is still listed online as a controversy. So like I said, we're in an information war. You got to understand that the other political side, the Democrats, they haven't been totally dismantled. So they're going to fight. And they're going to put things out there and use the media platforms and news networks that are pro-Democrat to spin these stories. But they're not going to be able to spin them when the Declass drops, as it relates to Kash Patel. So now this is the big one. This is really what this is all about, as it relates to the biggest military sting operation. It's Uranium One. Now, Uranium One is allegations against the previous Barack Obama administration, including Joe Biden, that uranium was being secretly sold on the black market in order to stage a coming war with North Korea, and then to have the U.S. lose the war. So back to our previous shows, what I was explaining was that when Donald Trump was elected president in 2016 and came into office, he was able to now get a security clearance to see all the classified documents that was in the government's possession. And because he was able to see the classified documents, he was able to see what the previous administration was actually doing as it relates to a lot of things. But Uranium One was where they were alleged to have been selling U.S. uranium on the black market so that down the line, which would be around the time that Joe Biden was leaving the White House last year, we would be pushed into a war with Russia and North Korea. And that uranium would be used in either a false flag event or in some way to kick the war off so that here could be attacked from an outside source and lose that war. So we have true infiltration in our country at the highest levels of government, and what we see now with Trump in his second term is unprecedented. He is dismantling the so-called deep state or the administrative state that has been in play as far back as 1913 under the Federal Reserve Act. So the central bank and how our money system flows with the U.S. Treasury, the Federal Reserve was established in 1913. It's a Western central bank that basically charges us interest on the printing and circulation of our Federal Reserve notes.
Puerto Rico, correct?
Yes. Yes. So Uranium One is the big connection for why this is the biggest military sting operation in history, because it involves a plot to plunge us into a war. And now I'm going to kind of use some other wars to show you that as democracy has been spread around the world, what we can see in a pattern is that a lot of countries have been overthrown. Like one key country in particular is Libya with Muammar Gaddafi. Everybody knows who Gaddafi was. He was trying to put Libya on the gold standard. He wasn't able to achieve that. He was murdered and dragged through the streets of Libya, and Libya was overthrown. So all of these countries that the U.S. has been waging war in since Iraq, Afghanistan, they have installed democratic systems, but their playbook is to infiltrate the country, overthrow the government through a political uprising, and then bring the military attack in and change the course of history in those countries. That playbook that they've been running outside the U.S. is the exact playbook I'm speaking about that they were trying to run on the U.S. to overthrow our government here and install a democracy and get rid of the republic that the Constitution guarantees us. And I want everybody to do this research. If you look in the United States Constitution, the Constitution does not have the word democracy in it at all. What the U.S. Constitution affords all of us as U.S. citizens is a constitutional republic, not a democracy. Democracy is something that came a little after the forming of this country, but it is not secured by the Constitution. The Constitution speaks about a republic. So what we're witnessing is an attempt to overthrow the republic once and for all, get rid of the Constitution by Democrats and Republicans alike, because this is not about going after all Democrats. Like I said in previous shows, if you voted Democrat at your local level or for former presidents, you're not technically a criminal because you voted Democrat. This is about the upper echelon of the party and what they've been doing to the Democratic voters, unbeknownst to a lot of people, which is trying to overthrow the entire United States Republic that is guaranteed by the Constitution. And they used Crossfire Razor, Crossfire Hurricane, and what I just explained about Uranium One, which is selling U.S. uranium on the black market. And obviously, let me add this, now under the new Trump administration, they're investigating the flow of money in every agency in the federal government. The biggest news story is that they disfunded USAID. So USAID is a huge program that does a lot of work for soft power overseas with different charitable organizations and non-governmental organizations to provide assistance to various countries in Africa, the Middle East, and how those charitable organizations have been being used as fronts to launder money back into the pockets of various politicians. They use the charity overseas. As an example, they were giving out condoms to people in Mozambique and millions of dollars to sponsor this. And they say that it was to help the AIDS epidemic over there. But now what they're finding in their audits is that, let's say you got $1 billion flowing into that specific program, only a small portion is being used for the actual program, but the money is somehow being siphoned back into the United States and going into key Congress and senators' bank accounts. So they've been laundering U.S. taxpayer dollars using all of these different entities and government organizations and non-governmental organizations in a transactional scheme to money launder. So a lot of these things are being financed, obviously, because people incentivize these things through money, and it's being done through not only fraud and misrepresentation of the American people, but also theft, because they're sticking it back into their private bank accounts, right? So I don't want to get too deep on that, but that's just something I had to explain. Now, another thing, major thing, and this is going to line back up with this platform, is what actually happened on January 6th, meaning that January 6th, everybody know, was a protest to try to return the votes back to the states as it related to the 2020 election and whether or not there was fraud and various things going on with that election. And it didn't work out. There was the peaceful protest was kicked up into what they call a violent insurrection. I think I explained that they don't have the right to call anything an insurrection because the power vested in the executive branch and the president, the sitting president, is the only one that can truly call an insurrection. An insurrection is where some people come together to try to overthrow the sitting president. At the time of January 6th, Joe Biden's presidential election had not yet been confirmed or certified. So Trump was the one who was in power when the riots kicked off at the Capitol, stopping the actual certification. So nobody had the power to call an insurrection but President Trump. And that's what he actually did. A lot of people are going to find that out real soon now that Kash is in, because like I was saying, the FBI has already admitted that they have various confidential human sources on the Capitol grounds on January 6th. We spoke about this in a previous show, but I got to bring it up because it's going to bridge home. You guys can look at Ray Epps. Ray Epps is one of the key culprits that the Republican Party and a lot of people that were rallying there for Trump make the claims that he was one of the key confidential human sources that kicked off those riots. And it was recorded on camera the day before the actual January 6th protest. Ray Epps was moving around the crowds of people that were gathering at the Capitol, preparing for January 6th, telling them we got to storm the Capitol. And people called him out as a federal agent because they were like, we're only here to peaceful protest. So there's a video that most people could look up and find if you type Ray Epps of people pointing him out the day before January 6th, 2021, or January 5th, 2021. He was in the crowds of people that was gathering at the Capitol, going around telling people tomorrow we got to storm the U.S. Capitol. And people was telling him, you're a federal agent. Go ahead. You saying something?
No, you got it. My bad.
Yeah, so people were pointing out Ray Epps on January 5th as a federal agent trying to incite a riot, and that they weren't there to do that. They were there to peacefully protest, and that was it. Now, this all came out after January 6th, that Ray Epps is, in fact, a confidential human source for the FBI, and there were various other confidential human sources in the crowd. And on the very day of January 6th, there's also video of Ray Epps at the front of the Capitol telling people to storm the Capitol. Now, obviously, he was in the front, and people did storm the Capitol, but what they don't understand is that also involved the D.C. area police. The D.C. area police, who was managing the crowd at that time because Donald Trump offered to have the National Guard. He offered the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and the actual mayor of D.C. People have to understand that who's in charge of the Capitol? The actual Speaker of the House and the mayor of Washington, D.C., their job is to protect the Capitol. Now, the president at that time, Donald Trump, he knew that there was a potentiality for civil unrest to be kicked off at the Capitol at his protest on January 6th. So he offered the Speaker of the House at that time, Nancy Pelosi, and the mayor of D.C., the National Guard to insulate any civil unrest that might kick off. And guess what they did? They denied it. They said they didn't want the National Guard on the ground. That's where Trump kind of exonerates himself from the allegations that he kicked off those riots with his speech that day, because he had already offered them to have the National Guard on the ground. They declined it. And instead, what we had was a bunch of confidential human sources from the FBI infiltrate a peaceful protest and turn it into a violent riot. So basically, Kash Patel now being confirmed, he's going to unravel all of that. They're going to unravel what really happened in the January 2020 election. And what I'm telling everybody, we spoke about this before, but it's relevant to Kash too. Fraud vitiates all. Donald Trump has all of the documentation and information from all the angles of how they stole the 2020 election. They're getting ready to release that on the American public. It's going to shock the world. Because when they drop all of this information, which involves who the confidential human sources, what role the FBI played in the actual insurrection to overthrow Trump's presidency, not the other way around. It wasn't Trump trying to overthrow Joe Biden's election. It was them overthrowing the fact that Trump actually won the 2020 election, and they were inside of a military sting operation, whether they knew it or not. And Kash Patel was a pivotal person in that role at that time, because Kash Patel let it be known that based on his tenor in intelligence, that the actual January 6th thing was planned at least a year before January 6th. So they already knew that they had to figure out a way how to get Trump out of power in 2020, and they planned for the events that took place at January 6th, way before January 6th. And Kash Patel, that's why they didn't want him to be. Let me say this too. Kash Patel, of all Trump's picks, they slow walked his confirmation, which went down yesterday, the longest of anybody else's nomination. So Trump had RFK Jr., he's now the health secretary. He had Pam Bondi, she's now the attorney general. He had Kash Patel as his pick for FBI director. They slow walked this thing. It took like 3 weeks to get Kash Patel's confirmation yesterday, because the week before, the Democrats made one of the moves that they could make, even though they don't have the majority, which was to push Kash Patel's confirmation back like a week. So by the time they did all of their posturing and things, it took about 2 to 3 weeks to get this confirmation yesterday, because they know that Kash Patel is like the end game. Kash Patel now has the power and the FBI power with the Attorney General power to go deconstruct everything they did, bring the declassification out and prosecute these people. And when I say prosecute, some people are going to be prosecuted at the state level by specific attorney generals. Others are going to be prosecuted by the federal government. And the third, which is the worst, is going to be prosecuted internationally in military tribunals. This is not a game. This is not business as usual, as we know U.S. politics to kind of over the last 30, 40 years to be a certain kind of way. This is unprecedented. A lot of people is in a whole lot of trouble for what they've been doing. So let me recap. You want to look at Crossfire Razor. I explain what that is. You want to look at Crossfire Hurricane. I explain what that is. You want to look at the Uranium One deals. That's them selling the uranium on the black market. And then you also want to be looking out for the full declassification of what took place on January 20, the election of 2020 in November. Because I told you guys before, go on Rumble, look up Maria Zack. She spoke on the Senate floor, and she dropped how they caught intelligence overseas and foreigners hacking certain election systems in 2020 in certain states and flipping the votes that were going in the machines from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. So when the actual declassification of what happened in the 2020 election comes, fraud vitiates all. That means everything from 2021 post the inauguration of Joe Biden till 2024, where Trump won and came into the White House, was a crime. All the bills, all the laws, and that includes the COVID, because Joe Biden was the one that mandated mandatory vaccines for everybody. And then the other thing that's coming out in the Declass as well is what went on with Anthony Fauci in the National Institute of Health and Virology, which involves the actual leaking of the gain-of-function research known as the corona bat virus from a lab in Wuhan, China, and how it spread around the world and led us into having to have a vaccine. And then how, like I said, that vaccine was mandated under Joe Biden and forced on the American people. If you worked in the medical field or if you worked in the elementary schools around the children, you had to get the vaccine or you were fired and lost your job. That has already now been debunked to have been unconstitutional. But it had to go all the way to the Supreme Court. So they've been doing this tactic. I would say the Democrats mainly have been using this tactic where, as it relates to Joe Biden back when he was in office, using the executive branch of the government to bypass the courts. And what that does is people got to bring their cases, bring it to the federal circuit, to the appeals, and then to the Supreme Court to get the ruling. So by the time that the Supreme Court initially ruled that the vaccine mandate was unconstitutional, the damage was already done because more than half the country had got the vaccine, and that was it. And the vaccine, in my humble opinion, was a biological weapon created to do population control. So everybody that kind of sides with the medical field and what they were doing and they were trying to save lives, that whole vaccine has caused countless deaths. And that information is also coming out. So I'm not saying anything conspiratorial. People were getting what is known as myocarditis, which is blood clots on various vital organs, massive heart attacks, athletes dropping on the field all over the world, young people that got the shot. Playing a basketball game, massive heart attack. Playing soccer, massive heart attack. So if you have any relatives that died of heart attacks or had diabetes and got the vaccine, and 9 out of 10 times the vaccine is what killed them off. And that's going to all come out as it relates to Dr. Fauci and what the Democrats and some Republicans were doing to overthrow the presidency of 2020, because they had to drop a biological weapon, which then allowed them to change the laws in all the states to have mail-in voting and not in-person voting. And that's where they used the ballots to overthrow Trump's presidential election in 2020, as well as other systems, like I was saying, which was hacking certain election systems, and they got caught by Space Force, which is an arm of the United States Air Force, extension by Donald Trump. He created the new agency, Space Force, and we joked about it, Star Wars. So Space Force's job is to deal in satellite warfare for missile interceptions and things of that nature, as well as intelligence gathering. They were able to intercept where the actual hacks were coming from. So Trump's been had all that information is back in 2020. That's why they were chasing him and raided Mar-a-Lago, claiming that he stole classified documents because he declassed the documents. And that's going to go back, so I stay on topic. When he declassified all of these documents, Patel was in the room. That's why they've been attacking Kash, and they want him to be the FBI director, because he knows that Trump actually declassified this stuff. And I explained to the people, when something is declassified by the U.S. president, it takes 5 years for it to be available to the public. These are the things, I guess, they put in play so that the things that are declassed, if they got to put it back in classification, it doesn't just drop right away. So back in 2020, Trump declassed these documents. Guess where we at, everybody? 2025. So 5 years later, we're in 2025 under the Gregorian calendar, and here we go. Declass is going to bring the house down. Declassification of documentations is going to gut the federal government as we know it. Like if you take a snapshot of the government today, when all of this stuff about the money laundering and all that they're working on comes out, certain senators and congressmen are going to be overthrown or primaried out of the actual House and the Senate. because there's a lot of corruption going on in this country, and it ties to all of these things. Uranium one, it ties to the COVID, it ties to the war in the Ukraine, it ties to the attempt or actual overthrow of the United States government of a duly elected president, Donald Trump, in 2020.
They call another FBI by Carl Albert Davis. No,
that too. So what we're looking for here is transparency, because this is what they're selling the American people. Transparency has now returned to government, something that we've never seen in our lifetime at this magnitude. The government has been lying and covering up stuff as far back as JFK, who was involved with that. When the JFK, RFK, MLK stuff drops, which I told y'all, go to Anna Paulina Lunas. She is the 13th Congresswoman of Florida. She's who they gave the declassification to. She put out a post a few days ago saying that the declass is coming in 45 days. They're not playing. This is all being done by the rule of law. So like it takes 5 years to declassify something. Once the 5 years is up, it takes like about 45 days for the final clearance. So we're talking about, I don't know exactly what day she posted that. It was a few days ago, either like 40 days or so. That is going to drop, and that's going to shake the world, because it's going to tie certain aspects of the federal government back then when they killed RFK, JFK, and MLK to the current players that's in the government and the stuff that they've been doing now. So this is big stuff. Kash Patel's nomination is huge, because if they're bringing transparency back to government, that's why I brought up January 6th and Ray Epps. There's a lot of confidential human sources that have been operating on these YouTube streets. Now, we know about some that are not confidential, that are former, but we know that those affiliations, like guys like Hassan Campbell, it's questionable. There's a lot of dudes that are operating as confidential human sources on this internet, YouTube streets, and now that it has been proven to the American people that the government has been weaponized. Let me add this, because we spoke about this. This platform, Carl came up with the term Obamanomics to kind of mirror Reaganomics and his understanding of this information, that under Obamanomics or Barack Obama's tenure, he put into play certain things that legalized, not made it law, but legalized actual propaganda being used against the American people when he did the Smith-Mundt. And let me say this, SMITHMUN, I think MUNCT, Smith-Mundt. I might have spelled that wrong, but if you do the Google search, you can find out what that is. That is where the actual propaganda was weaponized against we, the American people, by Barack Obama, where the intelligence agencies that would do more of foreign things were inverted to now include the domestic. So a lot of these charitable organizations and the fake news, that was all legalized under Barack Obama. So that might tie in to some of the stuff going on with Africa Bambaataa, Hassan Campbell, and why they've been playing this game that they've been playing on this internet now for about 8 years. They're in a whole lot of trouble. You don't get to do these things, man. You can't. These are crimes against humanity that has taken place on the internet, because it goes beyond the internet, and it deals with strategic lawsuits against public participation, where they reach out past the internet, and then they pull you into court cases, and it causes all kind of injuries. They call that now lawfare. Like warfare is a thing called lawfare, where the courts are being misused and people are being dragged into court and having to pay hundreds of thousands and sometimes millions of dollars in attorney fees to fight fake cases that are being put against them. All because people don't want them to participate in the public with certain discourse that basically breaks up their racketeering schemes.
Woo!
You understand?
Listen to one of them holler.
You understand? This is what's going on. That's why I've been telling, when I was more active in what happened to the boy movement, I was warning them. I didn't even know all of this that I know now, but I knew that much, that this stuff that y'all are doing on this internet is gonna line up, and we're getting closer. because there's a new FBI director, and if the government is going to be transparent, we want to find out how many confidential human sources they got on YouTube that's doing what Ray Epps did, which is coming out here with stories and telling everybody to storm the Capitol, and then when the people come to peacefully protest, they get arrested. So let's just say that what happened to the boy movement was a peaceful protest that got infiltrated by informants and turned into a violent riot, and then people got arrested or put with strategic lawsuits against public participation, because that's exactly what they did to all the people at the Capitol on January 6th. Trump had to pardon them all. Why did he pardon them all? Because he knew that it wasn't their fault. He knew that generally the people that came to peacefully protest didn't realize that they were in an actual intelligence sting operation, because you had a bunch of confidential human sources and fraternities as it relates to the DC police that were activating the people and pushing them into the Capitol, because they were firing tear gas behind them. So if you're out in a crowd of people peacefully protesting and tear gas is being shot behind you, the only thing that they could do was push forward. And who was at the front of the line? Ray Epps. The same guy that was there on January 5th telling everybody we got to storm the Capitol, and people was like, he's a Fed, we're not storming the Capitol tomorrow. But they wound up getting pushed into the Capitol by the DC police and the confidential human sources and various other intelligence operatives, so that they could try to say that Donald Trump's kicked off an insurrection, which is not even sound law, because he was the president at the time, and the only one that can call an insurrection is the one that's the president, because an insurrection is when you're trying to overthrow a president. So Joe Biden wasn't president. He didn't have the presidential power to call an insurrection. But what they did instead was they used various operatives in the House and the Senate and all the big news media agencies to lie and lie and lie for 4 years about Trump started the insurrection. Trump made this happen. No, the intelligence agencies weaponized under the previous administrations, like Barack Obama and the Smith-Monk Act, and the House leaders, they're the ones that did all of that, and that's all about to come out under Kashyap Patel, y'all. They're going to charge these people at various levels.
My Ray Epps has been quiet for a couple weeks and stuff because of this thing that's going on. How you doing, Ray Epps? AKA Lord Rodney Clark, Khalil Lamont.
We want to know how many confidential human sources is causing an insurrection. Because really what they're doing is trying to overthrow the country with the stuff that they're doing through these intelligence operations, or I would say disinformation campaigns. You got dudes making millions of dollars on this internet with fake news. Now, the First Amendment gives you freedom of speech rights. You can say what you want to say. But this is why Donald Trump also said he's going to be officially making a digital Bill of Rights. Because one thing that the U.S. Constitution didn't account for was the internet. The founding fathers of this country didn't know about internet back then. So the internet, which is more of a new phenomenon, is something that they're having to deal with all of these things: government interference, private companies owning their own platforms and who they can censor and ban, and all of these things being detrimental. Because when you have a right to freedom of speech, but when you tell everybody she's got a gun and everybody storms the Capitol, but then you find out that was fake news, that's a crime. See? So you can say what you want to say, but you still got to watch what you say, because what you say could be used against you in the court of law, as they say, right? What you say can be used against you in the court of law.
Life and death is in the power of the tongue. Use it if you want to.
So here it is. We on YouTube. We in the YouTube streets. Shout out to the YouTube streets. It started on this platform. You got a bunch of what I believe to be confidential human sources that was tagged in on this internet to insulate what was going on with Africa Bambaataa.
White 100 digital pit boss.
And now that the new FBI director is in and they're talking about transparency in government, we want to know what happened to the boy. Because y'all playing with the courts and stuff still to this day. It's supposedly a case. We want to see it. We want to see what y'all going to do. We ain't going to misuse the courts over here. We just going to let y'all keep doing what y'all doing while all this other stuff is going down, because we already did what we had to do over here. We already contacted certain agencies to let them know what was going on. And now that we understand that the government had been weaponized at that time and why certain people wasn't dealt with, now that Donald Trump is back in and they're ripping up all of these, they're ripping through all the federal agencies, they're laying off people, firing people, and they're reinstituting our government back by the people, for the people, the republic, not no democracy. The government is supposed to be subordinate to us, the people. It is through a contract. The government is not supposed to be weaponized against the people. They're supposed to definitely deal with threats that are domestic, but not at the magnitude and the manner at which they have been doing what they've doing, I want to say, for over at least the last 8 to 12 years. And it ties into all of these charitable organizations and these non-governmental organizations, which is just another way to say international. It's called non-governmental organizations. So,
Child USA, Marcy Hamilton. I'm still screaming your name too, but go ahead, my bad.
Yeah, Zulu Nation is on 6 of the 7 continents of the world with different missions. That is a non-governmental organization, i.e. an international charity. And then how it fits into these domestic charities. And then people is getting awards and stuff, being told that they're the greatest guy to ever expose, and they got an award from a charitable organization, hint, hint. And then you're out here getting donations and you're moving this fake news. And then all of that is just what you would call process crimes. Like racketeering and money, that's one thing. But when it ties into contract killings, reaching out past the internet and physically harming people, now you're in a whole different realm. And that's exactly what they did as it related to your platform, brother. They reached out past the internet, had you going up and down highways to court, putting people's name in court cases and stuff that were false statements being made to the government based on public participation in what initially was them coming and asking the public to participate. See the Ray Epps connection?
All day. When you
so they come out here, they scream, the sky is falling, molestation is going on. We need everybody to rally. And the other thing that they were doing too, they were trying to incite vigilante justice, because they were trying to have people do something to Bambaataa when he hasn't been actually charged officially and convicted on none of the stuff that they said he did. They was just using public opinion to say he did all of that and that he needs to be dealt with somebody, in hopes that somebody would take vigilante justice when they could have took this to the federal courts and charged them people criminally and vetted this properly. They were using grifting, because now the guy that came out on YouTube is a millionaire and a social influencer playing in these YouTube streets still to this day. We told y'all to get that dude off this internet, because the things that he did as it related to threats on minor children and all of that, with the feds coming and all of that, was way out of bounds. Then he doubled down on death threats and bomb threats. That was actual domestic terrorism live on YouTube. And if you want to just say, oh, he was just saying that, no, his conglomerate reached out past the internet on some ET stuff and they touched people. See? That's where you messed up. You should have just left it YouTube banter. It was just YouTube banter. So you should have just let dudes rock and say what they want, but they couldn't allow that because they were running an operation.
And then you don't want to share the funds. You try to cut the guy out. They got the information that goes against y'all. You need a positive and a negative. Y'all do not know how to create a charge truly. Y'all tried to cut me out.
Yeah, I agree with that. But you know what? I'm going to also say, in a way, that was the greatest thing that could happen, because being that you didn't generate no huge sums of money, they can't falsely charge you with no RICO. Because that's what the RICO is really all about. When you're it's RICO, racketeering, influence, corrupt organization. When you're organized, you have influence, you're corrupt, and you're running rackets, you're bringing in big portions of money. And that would be the YouTube dollars through AdSense that dudes is making on these different platforms while they're up here pushing this fake news. And then because people are coming out against them, they're killing people too, or doing contract killings.
Global gangsters.
This is not a game. There's a case right now, I'm going to say this. There's a case right now where, and this is just allegations against Jay-Z for doing just that same thing. They just launched a case a couple days ago where they're charging a conglomerate of corporations with sex trafficking, drug trafficking, and contract killings. It's all in the paperwork in the federal courts. Now, that's just allegations. It's an ongoing case, but it gives you an insight into how they're using these corporations, these shell companies, these charities, these non-governmental organizations to launder the American taxpayer dollars and transactional schemes, and how they're killing people and leaving a trail of tears along the way. And it lines right up with the very veracity of what they came when they claimed that Africa Bambaataa was an international child predator and been molesting children for 40 years from Bronx River housing projects to Brazil to the UK. And then recently I saw them with some French dude claiming that Bam did something to him, a French guy. So they're playing around in their societies, the boule, and yes, there's a lot of fraternity stuff going on with Kash, Patel, and Trump and all of them too. But this is a war of frats. So at the end of the day, this confirmation is huge. So I don't want to, go too far off that. Let me just finish up because I don't want to be long-winded. Let me see if I missed anything. I spoke about uranium 1. I spoke about Crossfire Hurricane, Crossfire Razor, January 6th, and the COVID with Dr. Fauci. These are all things that are going to come out in declassification, and JFK, RFK, MLK will be released in about 40 some odd days by Anna Paulina Luna. And it's going to tie things together that we see going on in the current with the FBI, the CIA, and all of these different agencies, and how even before Barack Obama, they were weaponized against us. I would say that the true, absolute weaponization of these agencies started back after they killed JFK, but kicked up again at the high level after 9/11, after they hit the Twin Towers. And then George Bush combined the intelligence agencies. So this is not just one president. This is not just one political party. It involves Republicans and Democrats, but mainly the Democratic Party, because as I explained before, the Republicans that worked with the Democrats on a lot of this stuff have been properly termed rhinos, Republican in name only. They're not doing true Republican things. They're really Democrats.
Peace right quick. We got 3 minutes to the hour. If you can wrap it up.
Yeah, we can wrap it up because we got more shows to do as this stuff comes out. I think I covered enough. People, like I said, do your research, lock in, because, man, the sparks are going to fly. They're getting ready to start.
So this is hip-hop news, y'all. We're hip-hoppers. He's a rapper. I'm a rapper producer. He's a rapper producer and everything. It's hip-hop. Documentary coming out on April the 1st. It's all for them. Khalil the Money did it for Layla Wills, Troy Star Terrain, and Africa Bambaataa, and Marcy Hamilton.
And that's it, man. At the end of the day, man, peace to the audience, peace to you. And I hope they get it right. They better get it right. And that's it, bro. I'm going to say peace, man.
All right. Peace. Love.
Throughout history, several historical groups and civilizations have been documented as having connections to ancient Israelite heritage while being of African descent. Here are some notable examples. The Beta Israel, Ethiopian Jews, a Jewish community that lived in Ethiopia for centuries. The Lemba people of southern Africa, who maintain traditions and practices similar to Jewish customs. various communities in West Africa that have maintained traditions and practices that scholars have linked to ancient Israelite customs. It's important to note that this topic involves complex historical, genetic, and cultural evidence that continues to be studied by scholars and researchers.